Hello, it's Annabelle Beckwith here. Now, I would put money on the table now that at some stage, maybe it's even now, your company will have had some challenges with internal communications. And it's one of those great ironies of life, isn't it? That everybody would like to think that they're at the very least an adequate communicator, and yet any company that I've ever worked with has always cited internal communications on one level or another as being a challenge. And make no mistake, if there are problems with your internal communications, you'll be losing money somewhere. You'll either be like leaving it on the table and not picking it up, or it is exiting your business and nobody's aware of it and nobody's talking about it. So it's a worthwhile thing to address. Now, there's three things to consider. The first is what's the human behaviour? What's underpinning our approach to internal communications? And this is so subliminal that we almost don't realise it. The second thing is, having recognised it, what do we do as a pattern interrupt to that? And the third thing is, how do we then go about implementing something that's going to improve the situation? Now, when it comes to patterns of human behaviour, what I'm about to say doesn't come from an academic journal or from research or from a degree or books or whatever. This comes from nearly 2 decades of working with organisations around the world and seeing patterns emerge. And the more and more these patterns emerge, the more they become. It's pretty clear that this is how people operate. So just to give you some examples, I was delivering a training program several years ago in Europe, and there were a number of people coming from different parts of the continent. So the group from Poland arrived and said, "Oh, great, yeah, looking forward to the program. Don't put us anywhere near the Greeks because real problem with the Greek market, etc., etc." And we thought, oh, okay, this might not be a promising start. We're going to mix them up anyway. A few hours later, the Greeks arrive. Yes, lovely, happy to meet you. Don't put us with the Poles because we've just got so many points of conflict, etc., etc. And of course, during the course of the week, they got to know each other. They worked together. We were working in mixed groups, obviously. And by the end, everyone was the best of friends. But here's what was happening. There was rapid growth with that organisation in the Greek market at that particular point. And the supply chain hub was in Poland. So there was actually quite literally a problem with supply and demand. What tends to happen in those situations, though, is that we become a tribe. And this is the first thing, is the tribe mentality. We become a tribe and we look out for our own. It is no longer human beings functioning within an organisation trying to get products to the customer. It's our market and supply chain. And I'm sure you'll have experienced this in meetings or whatever. It was nothing to do with finance. It's supply chain. It was not us, it's marketing. It's never us, it's somebody else. We can see the same mentality at a national level in terms of politics. Here in the UK, elected members of parliament, or at a local level, councillors within the local authority will be fiercely representative of their ward in the councils or their constituency in parliament. And obviously enough, that's where their electoral base is, that's where their power base is. But we stick up for our own. And if there's something that's going to benefit our community, even if it means a loss to somebody else's community because we get the funding and they don't, we will stick up for our own. If we bring it down just to the microcosm and our own families, we will stick up for our own families. You know, there's families who might be, fighting like cat and dog most of the time, but if any kind of external pressure comes along, they band together because they stick together. We protect our own, and this is the mentality that impacts, not always usefully, on internal communications, is that we tend to become subconsciously protective of our own department, our own team, and so on. And there's an extent to which that's a useful thing to do, and as a team leader you should have your team's back, of course. There comes a tipping point where that is no longer useful, and that's the thing to watch out for. So in terms of having recognised there's a pattern of behaviour, when it comes to internal communications, I'm protecting my own, whatever that, however that is manifesting itself. The next thing is to think about, what is the pattern interrupt there? It has to be something that broadens our perception of what the tribe is. We have to start thinking more broadly. The tribe is no longer me and my team, it's the overall department. The tribe isn't just my department versus their department, it's the business function. It's not just this business function and that business function, it is the organisation as a whole. And that sort of initiative, depending on how deeply entrenched tribal cultures are within the workplace, it can be a challenge to address. But if you don't address it, the danger of not can be significant. Following on from that, once you've recognised that, there's the pattern interrupt of how do I think more broadly about my tribe, and like measure the difference between what's the tribe that I'm currently focused on at the moment and what is of most benefit to my organisation here or my community or whatever context you're actually working in. Then is a question of, and what am I going to practically do to bring this about? That's going to fall into three categories. It is going to mean a change in terms of a mindset shift, because people are in the tribe. You know, they might not want to welcome everybody else with open arms, and yet this is something that must take place. There need to be protocols put into place, and this is why my focus is so often on leadership development. This is why it must be spearheaded from the top. If it's not coming top down, it's going to be sporadic. As always, leaders must role model what they want to see in this area. So those are the three things I just wanted to bring to your attention. What's internal communications? That's just the surface level thing. What lies underneath that is our interpretation of the tribe and the tribe we're protecting, and that's just the way that human beings work as a species. The second point is, what's the pattern interrupt to that thinking? And the third thing is, what are the practical measures that are going to be put in place and the change that must be undertaken in order to move forward, in order to pin down your internal communications and make your company more profitable and more productive. Thanks for listening. Bye for today.